Welcome back. Our next speaker is Professor Niloy Ganguly from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. Professor Niloy is a professor in the Computer Science and Engineering Department at IIT Kharagpur. He is also a fellow of the Indian Academy of Engineering. So he has worked at Technical University of Dresden for a couple of years after getting his PhD, and he joined IIT Kharagpur in 2005, and he's been a professor there since 2014. So he's got over 200 papers published in conferences and journals, many of them in reputed venues. His research interests are in social computing, machine learning, and network science. So it's a pleasure to have him here. Over to you, Professor Niloy.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So this talk is on fairness in two-sided platforms. I will explain what is two-sided platform. So two-sided platforms are platforms which we are regularly using, like Amazon, Flipkart, Swiggy, who sells products, or services like Uber, Ola, Airbnb, or content like YouTube, Spotify, Netflix. Or there are even donations going on in these two-sided platforms like donors choose Kickstarters. So what is there in this two-sided platform? There is the producer and there is the customer, and the platform sits in between the producers and customers. So now the problem statement which we have in mind is that we have to fairly consider preference of one or both sides while developing traditional IR algorithms like search, recommendation, or matching systems. So with this target in mind, let me discuss one of our recent works which has got published in WWW 2020. So it is on two-sided fairness for personalized recommendation in two-sided platforms. So what is I guess I have already told you what is a two-sided platform. So let me move on. So what is a personalized recommendation? So a personal recommendation is again a critical component of many two-sided platforms where each individual gets a recommendation, and algorithm suggests this type of recommendation suggest like products to buy, songs to listen, movies to watch according to one's preference. And how does a personalized recommendation algorithm work? If you see this, see there is some relevance estimation which is going on. And how is this relevance estimation done? From the user's history, then from the items he has chosen before, and also other users who have chosen similar sort of items. So it's a complex mix and match of users, items, and other users. And ultimately from there, we select K most relevant items. And there can be, this can be of various types of algorithms. We know over the years, it may be content-based, collaborative filtering, hybrid approach. These are the things which go on. So this is a task of a personalized recommendation algorithm. Okay, so and what is the goal of this personalized recommendation algorithm? It is to maximize customer satisfaction. And the point which we want to discuss is, although we know about this personalized recommendation algorithm, what is the effect of such customer-centric design on producers? How do producers react, or how do producers fare when such customer-centric designs are implemented? Okay, so in order to do this, I'm just talking about the data set in the beginning so that the context stays clear. So we'll talk about Google Local, where ratings of local business, which gives ratings of local business on Google Maps, and then it's a Google Local on Manhattan City in New York, where there are 855 businesses, some 12,000 around customers, and there are various reviews. And Last FM is like where we, which is a platform for artists having songs. So we have like 2,000 listeners, around 2,000 listeners, and around 17,000 artists. Okay, and 92,000 records. And we will recommend key most relevant artists to a listener, And the relevance estimation here means in our algorithms, we will do a collaborative filtering with non-negative matrix factorization. So now let us see what happens when we have this top K recommendation done. So now follow this graph, So in the graph, the x-axis is the percentage of producers and the y-axis shows the amount of exposures. So if you follow the red curve, you will see that around 80% of the producers, this is a cumulative exposure. So if I just consider 80% of the producers, they are getting just 20% of the exposure. 80% of the producers are just getting 20% exposure. Okay. Similarly, if you see here, actually you see that bottom 60% artists also just get 20% exposure. So what is essentially happening, what I am trying to tell by this graph, now what I am trying to tell is simple, that producers always, most of the producers get a hit when the customers utility is maximized. Okay. And so why do we care for producers? You will see there are a lot of tensions. There are a lot of tensions in this platforms, like sellers like Cloudtail and WS Retail on Amazon, Flipkart scaling up to grab top slots. So they are always fighting. Small sellers fear being elbowed out in e-commerce festival sell. As SoftBank OYO booms, some Indian hotels cry foul and check out. Heartbreak Hotel is SoftBank's way hurting Indian hotels. So there is always this type of two-sided platforms in front of their all the glitz are actually somehow unfair to the producers, to the small producers. And that is happening even if you see about Ola, Uber car drivers, they are also facing a lot of stress, lot of tension, etc. So with this keeping in mind, small producers depend on the platform of the livelihood. We are trying to design and this is not, this is also legal. So there are legal obligations. Government of India, even FDI policy says that small MSME should be actually encouraged. And the platform's interest is also there, that if there are a lot of producers, then there will be improved quality and more choice for the customers would be there. And there is a voluntary commitment or there is a business requirement also to take new producers on board. So as soon as new producers come, they should be allowed or they should be given enough exposure in this platform so that they can flourish and they can bring in new products. Okay, so now let us think in a different way and say that we will have a producer-centric strategy. And what is the producer-centric strategy? I am proposing poorest K. What is poorest K? Recommend K least exposed producers to the customer in round robin fashion. So if I see that this producer couldn't sell anything, I will present them to the customer in a round robin fashion. And that is good. And if we see that, now again I am going back to the graph, the middle line shows that exposure versus producer is exactly same. So it is following y is to x curve, and what we see that the poorest K is following the equality curve in both. Poorest K is following the equality curve in both this diagram. So then what we are seeing that top K has huge inequality while poorest K achieves almost equal. But is this fair or is this good? So we will see in the next slides. So next slide, we have to keep in mind that although we give importance to producer, customer is ultimately the king and customer's relevance is of paramount interest. So now let me define one thing. Define utility which a customer gets is by relevance, by the relevance of top k. So if I give top k, then the relevance, the utility is 1. If I don't give the top k result, then utility is somewhere between 0 to 1. Okay. So now if I see this and see the impact on customers, see for top K it is always 1, so very good. It is no issue. But for poorest K, you see the utility drops dramatically. In the Google local, it becomes average is 0.72, while in last FM it is like 0.2. So that means what? In order to give enough exposure to the producers, we have given bad choices to the customers, and their utility has dramatically reduced, which is not very good. These customers will leave the platform, ultimately hitting the good producers in a way. So now we are in a catch-22 situation that we all have to maximize the utility of the producers and the customers together. Okay, so we have to consider fairness on both sides. So keeping this into mind, so what is fairness of producers? Now let us try to define it in a more crisp term. What is fairness of producers? Fairness of producers is to ensure a minimum exposure guarantee for each producer. So this is like comparable to fairness of minimum wage guarantee, that everybody, no matter what, would be given a minimum wage. Okay, and it has been shown through various studies that minimum wage decreases economic inequality. While customers have to be given the fairness, where the resultant loss in utility should be low and it should be fairly distributed among customers. So when I am doing this fairness to the producer, it should not happen. That fairness should translate to a loss to some customers and no loss to other customers. The loss to the customers should be distributed uniformly. Okay, so then this is the question which we ask: what should be the guaranteed exposure and what should be a fair distribution? This is the next question which we are trying to ask, and for that we reimagine fair recommendation as a fair allocation algorithm. Okay, so now think of a fair allocation thing where there are a set of goods and set of agents, set of goods P and set of agents E. And say agent 1 has 5 5 triangles, 4 circles, 3 squares, and 2 Rubik's. Okay, so you have something like this, and each has some goods allocated. And what we do, we have the utility of the goods, which is also very personalized. So we need to remember, for X, a pen may be very valuable, while that pen may not have very use for Y. So that's why we are writing VU. So it's not that the V is the relevance of the good G is personalized. It's relevance of VUG. So for all V belonging to, for all U belonging to big U, and for all G belonging to the producers. Okay, and what is the goal now set? We have to find a fair allocation algorithm. Okay, so now this fair allocation algorithms, we now dive into the classical notions of fairness from divisible goods. And divisible goods has two very nice definition. One is envy freeness. What is envy freeness? Every agent values a bundle at least as much he values any other's bundle. So it is like that VIAI is greater than equal to VIAJ. So AI is the goods of I, while AJ is the goods of J, and VI is the utility which I feels about the goods AI, and VI is the utility which I feels about the goods AG. Okay, and this has to be envy free. So let me tell you one interesting thing about envy free. Say there are two mothers. Okay, each mother has a son. So a mother never feels envy for not having the other son. Okay, the utility of somebody else's son to a mother is much less than her own son. No matter how good that person may be. That person may be a world champion. That person may be a very good, brilliant person. That person may be Einstein. But the utility with respect to the mother is never more for that person for a neighbor's son than her own son. So there is an envy freeness there. Okay, so utility is very personal, and that's why the envy freeness comes. Okay, and from the customer's producer side, it is a proportional fair share. Every agent values her share to be at least 1 by n times of a total value of all the goods. Okay, so it is if the value of all the goods are n, they are 1, then and if there are n persons, then 1 by n of a total value of the goods he gets or she gets. That is the proportional fair share. Okay. So it is for divisible goods, but this is not also always possible for indivisible goods. This may not be always possible for indivisible goods. So for indivisible goods, we relax the conditions a bit and define something like this. One is envy freeness up to one good or one goods. Okay, so which is called EF1. I will explain it to you in just after this. And you have this maximum share guarantee, which also I will explain in the next slides. Okay, so what is envy freeness up to one good? So our allocation A1, A2, AN is said to be envy free up to one good if for every pair of agent I and J, there exists a good G belonging to AJ such that VIAI is greater than VIAJ minus one good from AJ. So what is happening? See this, you have A1 and A2. Okay, and A2 A2 has a square and a star, and it seems that the square has a huge value to A1. That's why we have V1 A1 is less than V1 A2. So value of A1 is less for V1 than the value of A2. But if we remove one product, here we have removed the square, then immediately the value of A1 becomes more than value of A2. Okay. Now coming to MMS or maximum guarantee. So if you have an allocation and you want to ensure MMS, so what happens is, see, if you have you want to break down into n parts. So if you have some products and you want to break down into n parts, so there will be one allocation which will be the least among all this. So it may be one case can be that everybody got equal allocations. Otherwise, if there are some inequality, then there will be one which will have the least. Now you can divide these items in various ways. Okay, in various ways, and any rational agent would what a rational agent would try to maximize this minimum allocation. Any rational agent will try to maximize this minimum allocation, and that is what is called maxi-min share gap. So now what we are ensuring, we are ensuring EF1 and a maxi-min share gap. Okay. So now let us go from fair recommendation to fair allocation. So now you have products as goods and customers as agents and relevance scores as valuation. Okay. So now setting is clear that you have products as goods, customers as valuations, and customers as agents, and relevance as valuations. Very good. So now you have you're now departing from existing fair allocation setup. You are giving guarantee only for the agents and custom, which gives a guarantee only for agents and customers. Allocation terminates when no product is left. But here what we will do, we will give producer fairness, that is each product is guaranteed a certain amount of exposure. Then we will talk about customer fairness, which is NV freeness up to one good. The allocation must be NV free up to one good. And then there is another thing, cardinality constraint from customer side. Each customer must be allocated K distinct product. So nobody wants two same product. So if you are selling say 2 cards or 2 computers, it is assumed here that nobody wants 2 identical computers. Okay, so you have 3 things: producer fairness, customer fairness, cardinality constraint from customer side. Okay, so now let us say there are distinct end products. Just follow this algorithm, and there are distinct M customers. Okay, and the recommendation size is K. So how many exposures are available? The number of exposures is, if you see K into M, that is M into K. M into K exposure are available. And the maximum possible guarantee for producers can be given. There are n distinct products, M into K by n, the whatever the integer value of this is. So this is the maximum producer guarantee we can guarantee. So no guarantee above MMS is possible. So now fair rate runs in 2 phases. The phase 1 ensures minimum exposure guarantee. So what happens? You maintain EF1. Phase 2 completes allocation of exactly K products. So after minimum exposure guarantee is given, then there is the producer side constraint is fulfilled, but you want to maintain the customer side relevant, so you continue with EF1. Okay, so now see this. I will take an example. So say recommendation size is 3 and exposure guarantee is 2. Okay, so let us say for exposure guarantee 2, which is less than MMS is equal to 4, but we give a exposure guarantee 2 to make you understand. So create 2 copies of each. So you have these 5 products. So you have 2 copies of each. So now what happens? And you allocate it to this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. Okay. So now when you allocate this to 5, 6, 7 people, so what happens? How do you allocate EF1 for customers now? So you can allocate EF1 by customers now by greedy round robin, simple greedy round robin. I will tell why this happens, the simple greedy round robin. And after you allocate to greedy round robin, the availability constraint also has to be maintained. A customer can be allocated a product only if any of its copy is available. And the feasibility constraint, a customer can be allocated at most 1 copy of each product. Okay, so you are actually doing it in a greedy round robin manner, but you are maintaining the availability constraint and you are maintaining the feasibility constraint. Okay, so now you have 10 products allocated to customers, 7 customers in greedy round robin, which leaves each customer with 1 or 2 products. We still can have allocate 3 products to each. So we still have to allocate K is equal to 3, so 3 products to each. So now what has happened? These 7 people have 10 products have been allocated to the set 7 people. So 7 people have got 3 people have got 2 products, and 7 and the rest have got 1 product. Okay. So now we go to the phase 2. In the phase 2, what happens? Make each product infinitely available, because the products have been now allocated. The producers have been satisfied. So now it is a free competition between the producers. Okay, so available constant is what? Continue greedy round robin from where you have EF1 intact, and you have to maintain the feasibility constant, sure. Okay. So now let us just think what is allocating in greedy round robin happens. Why does greedy round robin works as EF1? Simple. See, any customer I, so you have a round robin, any customer I is getting preference over a competing customer J how many times? Huh? It is always getting except for the first time. So if you think think customer I is the 7th customer while customer J is the 5th customer. Okay. The first time customer J gets preference over, say, the 5th customer gets preference over customer 7. Okay. But after that, it is always, so leave the first one. Then you think customer 7 comes first, then customer 5 comes. Customer 7 comes first, then customer 5 comes. So customer 7 just loses 1. So any customer can just lose 1. So then our allocation in a greedy round robin manner ensures that you have just one product disadvantage. So NV freeness up to 1. So now if you see the results, you see effects of fair rate. Gini index is a special index which measures inequality in customers, producers exposure. Okay. And if you see a fair rate here, it is actually, see here it is completely 0 in Google local. Here in last FM also it is very, very much low than other things. So this is top K. You see the Gini index of top K is always very high. Even mixed K, where you take some from top K, some for poorest K, that also is very high. So then fairness is assumed. So Gini index, what does Gini index showing? That the producers are getting some sort of good exposure, equal sort of inequality of producers is minimized. But what happens to the mean customer utility? See, mean customer utility, top K would have the best customer utility of 1, while others also, so also fair rate is also faring very well. It is very much close to 1. Okay. And if you see standard deviation, so this is one thing which I told in the beginning, that whatever loss happens, that loss should be distributed among all customers. It's not that one customer gets the entire loss, others don't. So we see the standard deviation is also very close to 0. Okay. So then what is the advantage of fair rate? It ensures minimum exposure guarantee for producers, maintains EF1 for customers. The time complexity is polynomial, just round robin, it is complex, and it's a post-processing method. So it doesn't depend upon what type of personalized algorithm you have done. It's a post-processing method, so scalable. It is independent of relevance scoring model and independent of business specific purposes. And you can have direct, you can have an online implementation or an offline implementation, whatever. Okay, so I think I am just 2 minutes in time.
Yeah,
So I will,
yeah.
2 minutes in time. I will just take 2 minutes to tell you about this. So this is about incremental fairness. So what happens is, in this two-sided platform, what happens? Algorithms are continuously changed. So Facebook continuously changed their algorithms of exposure. So then what happens to the news producer? So news producers who have customized their news for a Facebook algorithm suddenly now goes as a disadvantage. Okay. So now then they again have to adjust. So this updates causes a major headaches. So now what we have done in this work, a way to smoothly have these changes, a way to have the smoothly changes so that it doesn't become too burdensome to the producers. Okay. And so there are various issues with this, and we see this is a big problem which needs some sort of attention. So I conclude by this picture you may have seen that this is like Bangalore's work going on. So we know that this type of construction work goes on, which goes on for years. It causes customers pain, and we have to bear it, thinking that today's pain is tomorrow's gain, and today may last for 10 years, 15 years. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions. And this is the complex network research group, which for where I belong. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there are, I think, more of a generic questions. How can the system be helpful, for example, in the agriculture sector? That's a question that's come up.
Yeah, so it is a two-sided platform. So if we are having in the agriculture setup, you have the aggregators. Uh, so if the aggregators are trying to sell things, if the aggregators are trying to match the producers, the farmers with the customers, with the market, so then how these aggregators can behave so that the farmers get fair deal, that may be a different, that may be a interesting things to actually study. I don't know whether this side of two-sided platform exists in agriculture, but if something is there, I would be happy to actually discuss if somebody has some.
So another question is, maybe what was done on ML or AI regarding this research paper? What is the connection of ML AI to the research you presented?
So it is the relevance models which we are trying to build. So it is the relevance models which we have taken into consideration. So if you think that EF1, etc., this type of algorithms are not directly ML algorithms, but these are algorithms which are actually modifying the ML algorithm to some sort of customization. So again, I will tell you one interesting thing is that ML algorithm produces some output, and there may be some sort of interventions many times needed to customize this algorithm and make this algorithm usable. So EF1 or all these sorts of algorithms are a wrapper on ML algorithm. If you think the code innovation is not really ML, but these are wrapper on the basic ML algorithm.
I guess when you have to take ML to application, you need these kind of.
Yeah.
Great. I think we are out of time. There are a few other questions which you can look up in the Q&A. And if you'd like to type answers to those, you can type it over there. Thank you very much for really interesting presentation on fairness